Hello and welcome to episode 11 of our Smith Bearing Training and Educational Series. Today we're going to talk about re-lubing a yoke style bearing and a stud style bearing. All right. So here's our stud that will interface with our yoke bearing here. You take your lube gun, hook that right onto there like so, and see the lubrication going through there. So that lubrication will in turn go from here to, as you can see, on the internals of this bearing, you see a lube groove that is in there, okay? Now, and there also is a hole in there. So you never need to worry about having the holes line up, because the lubrication that goes through here will work its way into the lube groove and find its way into the hole in the bearing. And that's how we lubricate a yoke type bearing. Now, say you have a studded bearing and we have this kind of Zerk fitting in there, or Zerk in there. We call this a flush mount. And you see, we set this down in the bottom of the hex bore. And what this gives the customer the availability of torquing the bearing in still with an Allen wrench, but he also can lubricate as well. Now, instead of using this type of fitting here, we actually have a needle fitting right here like this. And then we take the needle like such, we engage it with the ball detent that's on the flush mount lubricator, and we go like this, and boom, we're lubricating the bearing. Why do we want to do this? We always want to lubricate bearings. Needle bearings especially, we want to lubricate. If we can get lubrication into this bearing, we will increase life. Now let's say, hey, I can't lubricate from either end, all right? As you can see, we have a hole right in the stud, and we have a lube groove, just like I showed you the lube groove in our outer race. So we actually have a lube groove on the stud. So if you're putting this into a block, let's say, you could actually drill a hole into your block, put the Zerk fitting into the block, and it will, once again, like I showed you in this application, you pump it through, it'll find its way into the groove, and then it'll find its way into the bearing. Now let's talk about some of the things that we do when we lubricate. We have some overzealous lubricators out there, okay? So what we've had to do is we've had to create a bearing so the customer can see that he's lubricating, okay? So here we have a tapered roller bearing. And what we do in our factory is we drill holes in the seal of the bearing. And this allows for when the customer lubricates the bearing, they can see it come through, and then they'll stop. Because that's what we want. We want you to stop once we see that, okay? This is a ball bearing that we use. As you can see, we have the shields on the outside, and on the inside, we remove the seals. They go into the application like this. So once again, once I get lubrication in there, it'll find its way into the backside. So I have the sealing technology on the outside, which is exposed to the outside, but then on the inside, I can get lubrication. Now we do make a bearing that has a full contact, spring sealed, basically shield in it. And now this does not allow for purging, all right? But it does allow for a little bit of expansion, all right? It will give a little bit. But in regards to this one, you have to be careful, all right? But it is lubricable, which never used to be. What we're noticing out there is a lot of our customers are asking to lubricate bearings. Okay, folks? Long time ago, no one seemed to care. Now everybody that wants a bearing wants some way to lubricate it. So we have different types of Zerk fittings, as you can see. This is the one that I showed you here, and this happens to be the flush mount that is on this one here. Now we also use a cap. So we can cap one end and lubricate from the other so the lubrication cannot go through, okay? Now, why do we have a screw type? Why do we thread? Why do we take the time to thread So here we actually have threaded the stud and we're using a threaded zerk. Why we do that is that sometimes in applications, they have a series of these down a row, and then they have lubricators. So they have lube lines to the back end of every one of these bearings. And then they'll have an actual lubricator that's what this bearing, that's what it does. It lubricates these bearings. Hence why you want to have a nipple on the outside like that, and you want to have it screwed in because you are dealing with another mechanism. Now the press fit ones, they usually just go down in the bottom of the hex bores, either on the roller end. So as you can see this time, and this one we put the plug here because we're going to lubricate here. We could have put a flush mount here and put a flush mount down in the bottom here too as well. The flush mount acts as a plug as well. So this way, when your bearing is out into the world, it doesn't matter where it's in the application. I can either get to the rear end of it or I can get to the front end of it.
We offer in-house stud modifications to accommodate various lubrication and installation needs. BHT stud type cam follower manufactured with broached hex hole and threaded end. THT stud type cam follower manufactured with threaded axial lubrication hole at threaded end. THF stud type cam follower manufactured with threaded axial lubrication hole at the end. Available with all cam followers over 3 inches. THP stud type cam follower manufactured with threaded axial oil hole on both ends of cam follower stud. Available with all cam followers over 3 inches. And last but not least, ALG stud type cam follower manufactured with annular lubrication groove at cam follower stem radial lubrication hole.
So a lot of different things we do because we truly believe that the more you lubricate these bearings, it'll get you through the rough times. When the bearings leave our factory, they are 80% filled with grease. So, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, you don't need to lubricate the bearing upon installation. I know all of you like to do that, but you don't need to do it with our bearing. And if you're gonna do it, please, one pump. Thank you for tuning in. Join us next time for more Smith bearing information.